What's up, Ragin Nation? How's it going? This is Alex Yu watching the Ragin Ronin review, and in this video we're going to do a spoiler chat for The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Now, in a previous video I mentioned that I wasn't going to make a full-on video talking about spoilers for The Amazing Spider-Man 2, but a lot of fans requested that we talk about spoilers, so I decided to come up with a list of things that I want to talk about that are spoilerish. Now, if you haven't seen The Amazing Spider-Man 2 and you want to see my review, make sure you, well, first of all, don't watch this video and make sure you watch my spoiler-free review. That way, if you're interested in knowing my opinion about the film, you can watch it without getting into any spoilers. But this video, we're going to cover a lot of spoilerish stuff, alright? So, let's talk about it. And just like when I mentioned before in my previous video, I did say that the trailers and the TV spots just cover everything about this movie. All the main story elements, all the main plot points are all covered in the TV spots and the trailers. Now, there are multiple full-length trailers. The marketing is just overkill on this movie. And you know what? It worked in generating big box office. You know, it worked in getting the movie out there. But it really hurt my enjoyment of the film because I just knew what was going to happen, thus making the movie very predictable. I mean, even if you didn't watch any of the marketing for the movie is still predictable, and it's because of the way the story played out. I mean, they really just spell things out for you, and then you know what's going to happen. First of all, let's talk about some of the villains. Okay, let's talk about Max Dillon as Electro, and Max Dillon is kind of like Jim Carrey as the Riddler in Batman Forever. He's not as like crazy like the Riddler, but he's got that kind of vibe going on. You know, he's kind of like this nerdy, underappreciated worker that nobody seems to care about. Nobody seems to give any attention. In fact, the main hero doesn't even give him any attention, even though he gave him a little bit of hope. But you know, I feel that the Max Dillon's character is kind of molded from the Riddler, and I like Electro. I don't see anything wrong with Electro. I just find that he's a little bit overpowered. I mean, he can do like so many things. You know, Spider-Man really met his match, but you know, it was pretty cool how Spider-Man managed to beat him. Let's talk about Rhino. Now, Rhino, I think, is the most controversial villain out of them all because he didn't need to be in the movie. Like I said in my spoiler-free review, if you cut out Rhino's scenes, it still makes the same movie. Now, let me explain why. In the beginning of the movie, you get introduced to Rhino. Alexei Sextovich, right? And he's stealing plutonium for, I have no idea why, but he's introduced at the beginning of the movie, and then you never see him for the rest of the film, okay? Now replace that scene with just Spider-Man fighting off bad guys, okay? Like robbers, okay? Just regular bank robbers. It would still be the same movie, okay? Now, let's move on to the very end of the film where the actual Rhino is introduced with no actual development, okay? Suddenly he's the Rhino, and suddenly Spider-Man's called back into action because they need him to fight off the Rhino, okay? And, you know, I get why they put in the Rhino. They wanted to make it a teaser for the rest of the Sinister Six. I get that, okay? But if you replace the Rhino with a bunch of bank robbers to get Spider-Man back into action, it's still the same movie. Alright, it doesn't need to be Rhino. Now, why would I not want it to be Rhino? I mean, you know, they add in a short but cool action sequence with the Rhino versus Spider-Man. You know, why wouldn't I want him there? Well, the main reason why is because we love our villains. Okay, we love our comic book villains. We want them to be done justice. And if you want to introduce characters like that, don't give them lackluster scenes like that. Don't give them scenes that are just very short and they don't really do a whole lot or contribute a whole lot for the story. Sure, it contributes to the next film, but let's focus on the current movie. You know what I'm saying? I think that if there was a comic book movie that introduced a villain really well for the next film, it was Batman Begins. Because, you know, the introduction of the Joker with the calling card, that's how you introduce a villain in an effective way for the next film. That's how you get fans excited, and that's how you end the movie well. Because, you know, the fans are like, oh my god, I can't wait to see the next one. Alright? So that's how you do it. Not like the, you know, not like the way they handled Rhino. Alright? You know, they should have just like made it so that you know, there's a news broadcast of Rhino being released, and that there's a thing in a Rhino suit, all right, and just cut it off right there, all right, and then Spider-Man's called back into action. That way we know there's something left. You know, there's some Rhino left for the next film, all right? You know, that way that we can get a good, you know, development and a really good relationship between villain and Spider-Man, you know, Rhino and Spider-Man. And, you know, that would have been cool, all right? Now let's talk about, well, first of all, we don't even know if Rhino's actually dead, okay? He could be just knocked out, unconscious, and just like the other Spider-Man villains, like Lizard and Harry Osborn, maybe he's probably in Ravencroft, all right? You know, we know that Electro has been like incinerated, but Lizard, Harry Osborn, and it's possible Rhino could be in Ravencroft right now, all right? So, you know, maybe we'll see that in the next movie. Now, let's talk about the one of the most talked about events in the film, and that is Gwen Stacy's death. Now, I gotta tell you that I actually like the way they killed off Gwen Stacy. I like that it was actually quite spectacular. And I think that if you make a death scene for a main character like that, you have to give it, you have to put a lot into it, all right? You know, you have to make it so that he has an opportunity to save her. Okay, it's in slow motion. You know, he tries to save her again and again and again. Keeps on shooting webs. You know, so you give the audience that hope, and then suddenly you kill her. Okay, and it worked. I thought that it was a great death. It was a great death sequence. That scene was just done really well, and it made the audience really like, oh my god, you know, it was just really done really well. Okay, so I gotta give Mark Webb you know, a big thumbs up on how they killed off Gwen Stacy. Now, with regards to Gwen Stacy's death, I did not need to watch the TV spots. I did not need to read the comic books to know that Gwen Stacy was going to die. Why did I know that? It's because, just like I said, the movie's predictable. The running theme throughout this film, The Amazing Spider-Man 2, is Captain Stacy, that's Gwen Stacy's dad, constantly reminding Peter Parker in his head that in his subconscious, that you cannot love my daughter. Stay away from Gwen because harm is going to come to her. But Peter Parker's, you know, he's got the hots for Emma Stone. I mean, he's got the hots for Gwen Stacy. He can't seem to fulfill her father's dying wish. He just can't seem to fulfill that. And he has to constantly see Gwen Stacy, thus leading to her death. Okay, so you can see that right from the beginning of the movie that Gwen Stacy was going to die, because he just keeps on ignoring it, and he suffers. He's responsible for that. He suffers that consequence. So you know, you just know that Gwen Stacy was going to die, because the running theme throughout the entire film was completely ignored. So. So there you have it. Now, let's talk about another death, and that is Norman Osborn. Norman Osborn, of course, is Harry Osborn's father. Norman Osborn, played by Chris Cooper. Now, in the first Amazing Spider-Man, they talked about Norman Osborn dying. They're saying that he's dying, okay? And so we didn't really know what he was talking about. And then they cover up on it. I mean, they talk about it again in this one, and then suddenly we see Chris Cooper in his bed, in his deathbed, and I just felt that, you know, there needed to be some build-up towards that. I mean, suddenly we get introduced to a classic character like Norman Osborn, and then he's already dying. Okay? You know, I get why they wanted to do that. They didn't want to have a whole repeat of the first Spider-Man directed by Sam Raimi, but it feels like a lot of things are just thrown in there. All right, and you know, it was a great introduction to Harry Osborn. You know, it was a great opportunity for the story to focus on Harry Osborn. But I know some of the fans wanted to see a little bit more of Norman Osborn and how he, you know, he's in the film. And what's also very interesting is that when we watch the trailer, there are a lot of key scenes of dialogue that were cut out from the trailer that, you know, it never existed in the movie. For example, Norman Osborn says, Harry Osborn says to his father, says, you know, what about Peter Parker? And then he says, not everybody has a happy ending, or something like that, right? And then, and there's also this scene with Harry Osborn saying to Peter Parker that Oscorp has you on surveillance. And then he says, why? And then he says, well, isn't that the question of the day? They cut that out entirely. I wonder what's up with that. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that seems like a pretty intriguing piece of dialogue, but they cut that out. So that's kind of weird. Now, Harry Osborn becoming Green Goblin. I got to talk about that. Like, I don't mind the whole transition from Harry Osborn to Green Goblin. I don't mind that whole sequence where he's just like becoming Green Goblin. Like I don't think that was rushed in any way. But you know what? I would have loved, or I wouldn't have mind seeing Harry Osborn be introduced for the first half of the movie, you know, and having a relationship with Peter Parker, having a constant, like, scenes with Peter Parker to develop that relationship, or redevelop that relationship, since they were apparently friends from 10 years ago. And then the other half of the film, he becomes Green Goblin. And then we establish the loss of the friendship between Peter Parker and Harry Osborn. I think that would have made a better film. All right, I think that if they did that, the Green Goblin would have been a much better villain. I think that a lot of people feel that the Green Goblin wasn't given enough screen time, and he wasn't given justice. All right, I think Day to Head did a great job, to the point where the audience wants to see more of him as both Harry Osborn and Green Goblin. All right. So that's what I would have enjoyed seeing, but, you know, I get that they don't want to repeat Spider-Man 1, directed by Sam Raimi. So, you know, that's why they did that. Now, one thing that I mentioned in my spoiler-free review is that this film is way too focused on setting up the Sinister Six film and the Amazing Spider-Man 3. You know, I think that if you want to set up next films in a more effective way, I think that the Marvel Cinematic Universe does it a hell of a lot better, because they have the movie focused on the main story and the main characters. It's focused on those things, not outside properties, okay? Not outside elements, okay? Developing, or rather introducing and teasing the Sinister Six, that's an outside element, okay? It doesn't really need to be in the Amazing Spider-Man 2. I think that the Marvel Cinematic Universe did it well by having it at the very end of the movie, or at a post or end credit scene. Okay, just have a little bit right there. That way, we're like, okay, I can't wait to see the next film. But the thing is that they scatter it throughout the film, The Amazing Spider-Man 2, to the point where it feels almost like we forget about it, because it wasn't at the very end of the film. All right, we just feel like, okay, what are all these scenes? Okay, we get what it's all about, but for general movie-going audience, they don't know what the heck these scenes are all about. Because especially because you have that guy in the trench coat and the hat, the mystery man with the hat. You know, that this guy is supposed to put the Sinister Six together, but the general movie-going audience doesn't know that. They definitely focus way too much on creating the Sinister Six. All right, I mean, this movie's supposed to be about Spider-Man. All right, so, you know, they decided to go with that direction, which I think was a little bit sloppy. Well, what about let's talk about the mystery of Richard Parker. Now, here's my problem with the way they handled the whole Richard Parker thing, and that is the whole Richard Parker disappearance thing was supposed to be, I thought was the running theme for the Amazing Spider-Man trilogy. Okay, Amazing Spider-Man 1, 2, and 3. I thought that by the third film, then we will have discovered, you know, resolved the whole issues, the emotional issues between Peter Parker and the disappearance of Richard Parker, his father. all right? But they resolved it all in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, all right? Which means that it doesn't need to be an emotional story anymore about his father. You know, in the first Spider-Man trilogy directed by Sam Raimi, the running theme throughout the movie was about how Peter Parker handles the death of Uncle Ben, and it is finally resolved by the time we get to the end of the third film. And then every conflict resolution is all there, all right? You know, the closure's all there. Now, in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, the closure is at the halfway point of the movie. So so it feels like, okay, the closure's done. No longer, you know, no longer care about what happens to his father. It's all resolved. He's happy camper, all right? So I feel that that was kind of weak. You know, I felt that, you know, to leave some more for the audience, leave some more emotion, you know, these kind of emotions for the next film, and you know, have it be the you know, the running theme throughout the film, throughout the trilogy. But they decided that, okay, introducing the Sinister Six is more important than Peter Parker's daddy issues. All right, so that's once again something I felt was kind of weak about the film. Now, another thing that was lacking in emotion was like Uncle Ben. Okay, sure, Uncle Ben is dead. He's not in this movie. That's fine. But they don't really follow up on that. You know, Peter Parker's just too focused on his hots for Gwen Stacy and focus on his daddy issues to even care about or really have any time or exposition to you know, have time and moments of sadness to reflect on the death of Uncle Ben. You know, Uncle Ben played a huge part in the growing up of Peter Parker. So you know, it's just kind of you know, it sucks that they just wrote him off just like that. You know, Uncle Ben was constantly talked about in Spider-Man 2 and Spider-Man 3 from Sam Raimi. But, you know, it looks like the whole new direction is really just, they're changing a lot of things, which, you know, I understand because they don't want to repeat Sam Raimi, but there's some things that are really important to the development and the emotions of Peter Parker's character that I felt that they just wrote off completely. So, very interesting that they decided to do that. I think that's all I gotta say in this video. You know, I talked a lot about it. Let's keep in mind that the movie is written by Roberto Orci and Alex Kurtzman, who I find are very inconsistent. I like them as writers. I mean, they wrote. I liked what they did for the Star Trek franchise. I felt that their take on the first Transformers film was decent, but Revenge of the Fallen was just terrible. But you know, it looks like they're quite inconsistent with their with their stories. You know what? Don't get me wrong. Okay, these are little elements that I felt could have been improved. I still give the movie a 7 out of 10, which is an above average score. I think it's a decent film. I think it's worth watching in the big screen especially. I think it's a very decent installment in the Spider-Man franchise. I still think the first one is better because the story is more linear. It's not that it's more simple, but it's very straightforward in telling the story of Peter Parker in a very effective way, bringing all these elements which are manifested onto itself from one single event, and that is the search for the disappearance of his father. All right, but as for these Amazing Spider-Man 2, it looks like they decided that they just wanted to throw in a lot into the mix, and you know, there's a saying where less is more, and I think in this case, more does not always mean that it's better. Alright, so there you have it. That's all I got to say in this video. What do you guys think about any of the things that I've talked about? Let me know in the comment section below. If there are some things that you want to talk about that I didn't cover, also let me know in the comment section below. Alright, that's all I got to say in this video. As always, if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, like me on Facebook, The Ragin Nation. Also follow me on Twitter, @Ragin Nation. My name is Alex. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace. You know, your demographic is American audiences. So they need to see things like good characters, you know, good writing, a good story, and